big majority of Americans, 63%, disapprove of the handling of the economy as soaring inflation wipes out wage gains. Meanwhile, the administration is facing the resurgence of another issue that Democrats constantly worry could drag them even lower in the midterms, the situation at the southern border. As the Washington Post reports, some top Democrats are lashing out at the administration and each other over the plans to lift an emergency order at the border, which could lead to a surge in migrant crossings. Joined today in the panel, Maria Teresa Kumar, President and CEO of Voto Latino, MSNBC contributor, Betsy Woodruff-Swan, national correspondent at Politico, and David Frum, writer at The Atlantic and former speechwriter for President George W. Bush, and also an MSNBC contributor. Maria Teresa, let me start with you. Title 42. First of all, on May 23rd, do you expect Title 42 to be lifted?
We would hope that to be the case, but what I'm hearing is that is not going to be. It's not going to be such a rush.
If they find a reason to extend it, they're going to take it.
Mm-hmm. And the reason I bring up the Latino community is that we just launched a poll and found that close to 30% of the people who had voted for Biden out of the Latino community aren't sure if they're going to come out.
You know why? Did you give a good explanation as why? Is it all in one direction, or is it just? Are there many reasons?
I think fundamentally it's the economy. And it's not the economy at large. We are talking bread and butter issues. We're talking about that, yes, you can be back to work. And yes, you may have seen a modest raise. But if the price of milk all of a sudden is pushing on $8 a gallon and you're still living on $15 a minimum wage, that's not enough. And you don't have anything else to demonstrate that the government's working for you. It's really challenging.
Betsy, the administration's panicked about immigration. How can you tell their own spokesman say, hey, this wasn't our decision. This was the CDC's decision. And you're like, wow, you don't want to own this at all. It seems like our economy is struggling on the labor front because we don't have enough immigration. And this administration has been afraid even to touch that.
It's always something that Democrats have struggled to talk about, and where Republicans are often very comfortable being in sort of the peanut gallery. It's easy for Republicans to say that Democrats are doing a terrible job and blame the federal government for whatever is going on the migration front on the southern border. This is very much for the GOP. This is their total comfort zone, the situation that the administration is in right now. And of course, it's not a situation that anybody would envy. The politics are really complicated. And, to the point about the NBC poll, I think didn't the president's support among Latino voters drop by something like 9%? That's a scary number for an administration that has rhetorically really committed itself to this community. So it's hard to see politically if they have an easy way out.
David, part of the problem right now is, as somebody was explaining to me yesterday, that if you took the Gang of Eight bill from 2013, not only would you not have as many Republicans supporting it as did then, you couldn't get all 50 Democrats to support it. The middle ground, we've gone further away from each other in the two parties on immigration.
The Gang of Eight bill is entirely unresponsive to the situation today. And this is the thing I think people don't understand about what the nature of the immigration crisis is. I wrote in the very first month of the administration, this is going to be the issue that sinks them in 2022 if they're not careful. This is no longer the illegal immigration of yore, unattached young men in groups, singly or in groups, crossing the border, defying the law, looking to elude detection on their way to the American job market. This is the overwhelming of the asylum system. The border crossers are not breaking the law. They are abusing a law that was written with in mind the victims of Nazism and fascism, people who were fleeing political persecution. Now you have hundreds of thousands, millions of people, often in family groups.
Economic disposition.
Yes, crossing the border and saying, I want to be found. I want to enter the system because the system will not give me a speedy trial. It will release me into the American economy pending my speedy trial. So long as I think I'm winning, I will comply with the law and have a driver's license and many rights of residency. And at such time as it looks like I might lose, then I drop out of legality into illegality, and that might take years. And this is a problem that American law is completely unprepared to deal with. Right. And so the Gang of Eight bill, that was all about the illegal immigrant of yore who came across as a single young man trying to elude detection.
Well, the Gang of Eight bill, the biggest challenge is, and you sort of alluded to it, there is two issues right now. One, that what's happening at the border and folks seeking asylum. But the Gang of bill addressed the people that were already in this country, the 11 million or so who have been here for about 20 years on average. I mean, you think about when the...
Remember, it was 11 years then, but it's because we're 8 years later, we're now saying right. 2 decades.
2 decades. I mean, so if you take and imagine, when DACA passed, we were talking about 18-year-olds. 18-year-olds are now pushing 30, 32, and they're still in limbo, even though they have temporarily asylum for all intents and purposes. And so what the administration needs to to look at. And I know that Congressman Raul Ruiz has been working very closely behind closed doors. What are the executive actions that could address those individuals that are stuck in limbo in the United States? The issue of migration and asylum seeking, we have to absolutely address, but they are two distinct issues. And what the Republicans have done very, very well at is conflating the two. And we have to talk to the American people because they recognize that that neighborhood restaurant that you love to go to, where the owner might be undocumented, he's part of your family and part of your community. How do you address his status?
Betsy, there seems to be no, I don't want to say bandwidth, forget bandwidth, no appetite in the administration to deal with this.
They don't want to talk about it. It's not something where you see them going out front, being aggressive, proposing anything sweeping or inspiring that they can use to appeal to immigrant communities. Rather, it's an issue where the Biden administration is very much playing defense and very much talking about it in a way that's responsive and reactionary to what Republicans are doing. Republicans are essentially laying out the terms of the debate, defining the issue. They've done it in a way that's very effective. And the Biden administration now is just trying to essentially push back and, staunch the bleeding to the extent that they view it that way. One thing that I would note about the asylum system that makes the asylum legal challenges so complex is that while some people who come to the border seeking asylum maybe coming for economic reasons, those Northern Triangle countries are so troubled. And many of the people who come to the United States and seek asylum are doing it because they need asylum, because the countries that they're in have become, in some ways, almost borderline failed states.
That's exactly right. And part of the things that
one of the things was not designed to deal with the problem of I live in a bad country. It was designed to address the problem. They're coming from me personally because of something I can't control. If asylum is for anyone who lives in an unstable, violent, and poor country, that's many billions of
people. I think the challenge with the Triangle countries, as you're recognizing, is that the United States exported the gang problem to Central America. These were individuals that were basically picked up on immigration, went into Los Angeles County jails for the most part, got indoctrinated into the gang system, and then were sent.
It's so bad in El Salvador. They just declared a state of emergency. They've basically suspended rights for a lot of its citizens. It's a little concerning.
If you're gay, if you're a woman, if you're a child, and you don't want to be part of the gang, you are targeted. And we have to recognize the hand that America had in actually creating the disruption.
We have to recognize that asylum cannot be the problem for global slow development. It cannot be the problem for instability everywhere on Earth. And what you will
I think you should have that conversation and talk to the Ukrainians, to the Afghanistanis. You should have a conversation with the Venezuelans.
You will destroy liberal government in the United States. And I've been saying this for a long time. But if people who have responsible politics will not accept that the border is an important issue, that it has to be stabilized, that the state has to be in control of the movement of people. That is something that voters everywhere want. And if they can't find responsible people who will do it, they will find irresponsible people who will promise it.
I want to shift it. Why isn't an economic argument an effective one here? I mean, we're desperate for workers. I mean, I met with the mayor of San Antonio earlier this week, and he's like, we got 3.8% unemployment. We need workers. And he's working on a pilot program that's interesting, working with the government of Mexico. I'm sure you're a little bit familiar with it. It sounds like the way you reacted.
Well, but Chuck, this is the thing, is that
Isn't there an economic argument to be made?
There's an economic argument to be made if you actually recognize the aging in of Americans in general. For the very first time, the white population, according to the census, dropped significantly. And if you don't have people coming in and to renew our economic engine, we're going to look much more like Japan, like Europe, than we would be in the thriving country that we are. And I think that I'm not disagreeing with you that we need to make sure we need to have responsible laws, but
we can't live without water. But it's not a good argument to say when I say there's a flood in the basement and my house is going to be destroyed. You say, well, without water, you won't be able to live.
I think that's and Betsy, that's why the administration doesn't know what to do. And they'd rather throw up their hands, not talk about it, and hope people pay attention to something.
But it's a strategic decision not to actually be ahead for the 21st century, and I think that is the conversation we need to have. Chuck.
And they did volunteer. For the job.
Fair point. This is why it's good to have panels back. So thank you all.